Jeff Power found solace in the isolation of the Galiuro Mountains of southeastern Arizona, living in a canyon so remote that it had no official name. It took several years of back-breaking work to cut a trail through some of the toughest country he had ever seen to connect his mind to the nearest road into town. But he had chosen to live there precisely because it was far from civilization. His sons, John and Tom, had done the bulk of the labor, while Jeff and hired hand Tom Sisson rounded out the road crew. A prospective buyer for his mining claim was due any time, and after a lifetime of just getting by on the frontier, Jeff Power was certain prosperity was close at hand. A snowstorm was threatening on the evening of February 9, 1918, delaying his anticipated visitor. But events far from his canyon hideaway also jeopardized Jeff Power's plans. Even in his secluded location, he could no longer distance himself or his family from the transformations occurring in American society. His sons were required to register for the draft, but he saw no reason to send them off to fight in a war in Europe he did not believe in, telling a shopkeeper when he made the long trip into the Gila Valley for supplies, "This is your war." Pointing toward his home in the distant canyon, he added, "That country over there is ours. We don't want nothing to do with your war." Sheriff Frank McBride left the Graham County Courthouse in Safford on Saturday, February 9, 1918, for the Galiuro Mountains with warrants for the arrest of the 4 men living at the mining shack owned by Jeff Power. He had a long automobile drive ahead of him from his home in the Gila Valley to the small ranching community of Klondike, and then several hours on horseback over difficult trails into Rattlesnake Canyon before he would reach the Power camp. McBride did not think much of the Power brothers, Tom and John, who refused to serve in the military. The sheriff, a devout Mormon, believed every man, woman, and child should pledge their all to the war effort. His religion had taught him that in times of crisis and hardship, sacrificing individual desires while pulling together for the good of the community was the best solution. From his years in law enforcement, McBride believed the Aravipa region, where the Powers lived, was full of people who disregarded the law: poachers, moonshiners, bootleggers, cattle rustlers, and murderers. Gossip was circulating among the residents of the Gila Valley that Jeff Power's daughter, Ola May, who had died recently under suspicious circumstances, had been murdered, perhaps by someone in her own family. McBride was determined to find out what really happened to her and bring the Powers to justice. But Jeff Power never found a buyer for his gold mine, and Sheriff Frank McBride never served his warrants, because both men died the next morning in a gun battle that took place at the Power cabin. 2 of McBride's deputies, Martin Kempton and Thomas Kane Wooten, also were slain, bringing the death toll to 4, the deadliest gunfight in Arizona history. At first glance, the shootout reads like something out of a Zane Grey novel or a John Ford Western movie script. 4 armed men surround a lonely mining cabin at dawn. Someone inside, awakened by the commotion, walks out the front door, rifle in hand. One of the men outside the cabin yells, "Throw up your hands!" Firing commences. But closer examination reveals a far more complicated story in which it is difficult to determine who held the moral high ground. There are hundreds of books and articles written about the shootout near the OK Corral, where 3 men died on the streets of Tombstone in 1881. But far less has been written about what happened in 1918 at the cabin owned by Jeff Power, located just 60 miles north of Tombstone. While the setting of the Earp and Clanton-McLaury confrontation fit expectations for a Western gunfight, the center of a bustling mining town during Arizona's raucous territorial days, the Power shootout occurred miles from the nearest settlement and after the frontier had closed, when America was on the threshold of becoming a modern society. By the 1910s, political, social, industrial, and commercial institutions had transformed a nation once filled with unique communities into a formidable federal system, as Richard Slotkin argues, capable of touching the lives and influencing the behavior of communities in every part of the nation. Even in the newly minted state of Arizona, one of the last frontiers of the American West, industrialization and urbanization were transforming the landscape as people moved from rural homesteads to towns, attracted by such modern conveniences as electricity, indoor plumbing, good roads, and opportunities for advanced education for their children.